Good evening, everyone. It is a few minutes after 5:30. This is our pre-agenda meeting for the month of March. It's March 7th, 2024. And I officially call the meeting to order. And we do have a full quorum this evening of all of our board members. And so we will begin with an invocation. If you will, bow with me. Father, we thank you for this beautiful day, beautiful spring day that we've experienced. We thank you for the many blessings that you've bestowed upon our town. And we ask that you be with us tonight, be with our staff and our elected leadership as we discern your will and the will of our citizens within this town, that we may continue to make this a better place for all. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have quite a bit to cover this evening. The primary focuses are going to be a public hearing that we're holding on an annexation, review of our regular meeting agenda for next Tuesday, and then a community input session that will help us as we move forward into tomorrow's strategic planning session. So we will begin with the public hearing on the Hawkins Meadow annexation. I'll invite Mr. Blunt forward to give us an introduction.
Mayor, members of the board, you are familiar with this project by now. We've gone through a rezoning. We've had 3 previous public hearings on this issue. I've got 2 presentations for you tonight. First one, just a very quick run through that will show you the property that's being considered for annexation, so you'll know what you'll be listening to tonight and what you'll be considering at your meeting next week. So the Hawkins Meadow annexation, and this is again a privately owned piece of property. It's a voluntary satellite annexation. This is the big picture of it. It's south of Hawkins Town Road. The southern part of the property butts into Grants Creek. This is a little closer view so you can see what's around it, mostly undeveloped land at this time. These are the property parcels, so you can see what parcels are around the property. This map shows you where the municipal limits of Spencer are in relation to the piece of property. As you'll remember, we had to enter into an agreement with the town of Salisbury because their municipal limits were actually closer to the subject property. They have agreed to allow us to annex that property. This is why we're going through all this trouble. It's a site plan for the development, the Hawkins Meadows townhome development, 141 townhomes on 20 acres roughly. And that's turning it sideways so you can see it a little bit better. This is some of the economic information. This is important on an annexation because you definitely want the expected revenues to be more than the expected cost or expenses. In this case, it's a great deal more due to property tax increase and sales tax increase due to population increase. And this is a little out of date. This presentation was originally set up to give to the planning board, who, by the way, voted unanimously to recommend approval of the annexation to you. And the groundbreaking was scheduled actually for today. We've had a pre-construction meeting at the site. They're supposed to break ground today and start grading work. Not sure that happened, but that was the schedule. So from there, we'll go to the next presentation. If our wonderful IT person will do that for me. As we have gone through, this is now the 5th public hearing actually on this project. There have been a lot of questions, a lot of misconceptions, misunderstanding of the process and the impact on the neighborhood. So I put this presentation together. I think 1 or 2 of you requested at one of your meetings that we answer some of those questions and try to explain it in a way that you could understand and the public could understand. Right. And the biggest question that I think we've run into is a misunderstanding of who provides the services in the area now and who will provide it to the newly annexed area. This map is our zoning map, and I think you can see it, that dark black line that runs out towards Grants Creek and then up to the northeast. That's our municipal boundary. So everything on the inside of that is within our municipal boundaries. Everything outside of that that you see colors applied to, zoning classifications, is in our ETJ. Y'all understand that. You've seen these maps before numerous times. The subject property is over to the left right now. It's in dark, well, it used to be in dark green. You've already approved the rezoning to RMST. But this is where it gets confusing. You see Hawkinstown Road running right to left across the lower third. The red piece of property is the property in question for annexation. The lower right-hand side in the darker blue is the Spencer town limits. Coming around to the left, the teal colored is the Spencer ETJ. Next is the Salisbury ETJ, and then in the rust color is the Salisbury city limits. So right now, the people living on Hawkinstown Road, depending on where on Hawkinstown Road they live, may live in the Salisbury city limits, may live in the Salisbury ETJ, may live in the Spencer ETJ, and soon there will actually be, hopefully, Spencer municipal limits out there with the adoption of this annexation agreement. So there is confusion first about who provides services based on where they live. And you heard some folks complain about going to Salisbury, and Salisbury tell them they needed to go talk to Spencer, and Spencer would tell them to go talk to Rowan County. It wasn't that we were just trying to mislead them, it's just very confusing to figure out where those services are provided. This shows you in written form that the services in our ETJ and within our municipal limits and who provides it. So for zoning and subdivision, we do it in both of them, in the ETJ and the municipal limits. Inside the municipal limits, the town of Spencer also provides police service, fire, garbage collection, yard waste, water and sewer, where it's available through SRU, and street maintenance on non-DOT roads. In the ETJ, the areas around Hawkinstown Road now, police coverage is provided by the Rowan County Sheriff's Department. Fire is covered by Ellis Volunteer Fire Department. Garbage collection is by private collectors, and there are several that service that area, so I can't tell you which one services each property. Yard waste, usually the property owners themselves have to dispose of it one way or another. Water and sewer, for the most part, is provided by wells and septic tanks. A few people are connected to Salisbury's water and sewer. And street maintenance, because Hawkinstown Road is a NCDOT road, maintenance of that street is provided by NCDOT. So you can see where some of the confusion comes in on who provides a service, and therefore concerns over who will provide services in the future.
Mr. Blunt,
yes,
an
sir.
important point that we need to make sure that everybody's aware of is that for those in the ETJ, they're only paying county taxes at this point in time.
That's a good point. So for those that are getting services, and this is a chart that shows you the same thing in chart form, those that live within the municipal limits of Spencer and get all of the good services that we provide, they pay for it. They pay taxes. Those in the ETJ who are having to hire somebody to haul their garbage and depend on the Sheriff's Department for police coverage, they don't have to pay our taxes. They pay county taxes. We all pay county taxes, but they don't have to pay municipal taxes. So before I get to the next slides, what that means is that when we annex this property and the developer builds 141 new townhomes, the town of Spencer will provide all of those services to all of those townhomes. None of the people that are providing services in the ETJ now, Ellis Fire Department, Sheriff's Department, NCDOT, etc., will be required to provide services in this development. So we're not going to be diluting the quality of service in the existing ETJ. If anything, we're taking a few acres out of that Ellis has to cover now. Right now it's a cornfield, so it's not a big fire hazard, but they don't have to worry about it anymore. So as we went through the public hearings, you heard questions asked. And I've been at all of them, starting with the neighborhood meeting and then the public hearing for the rezoning, the public hearing for the annexation agreement. I went to the Salisbury annexation public hearing, and we heard various questions asked, concerns expressed at each of these meetings. So with your permission, I'll run through those very quickly. I think you have them in your package so you can read them at your leisure. Concern was expressed about whether our fire department, our police department, et cetera, could handle the extra 141 homes. I met with each of our department heads in these areas, other than the garbage collection, which obviously Joel will have to run a route through this development and pick up garbage for all these houses. Other than him, there's no immediate impact. Certainly there will be that many homes out there, so there may be some crime, there may be fires, those kind of things, but it won't be a dramatic increase, won't be a big increase of cost.
Mr. Blunt, I'd like to
Yes, sir.
jump in right there on actually one comment about the garbage. We're actually, my understanding is it could be the way we just heard, but it also could be that the developer elects to, through the HOA, arrange for containers in various locations to provide that service. Because, for example, if we collect it, that would be the taxes fund it, but also the $15 a month fee that everybody would pay funds it. And the thinking is for that much per month, they might be able to actually get a neighborhood collection process set up, funded and managed by the HOA. And I don't know that that's been fully determined yet, but I know those conversations are there, given the density that may be something they could elect to do if they would like. And if that'd be the case, those folks wouldn't pay the fee, and they wouldn't receive the service. So I just wanted to toss that out. Joel, I don't know if you have any further comments at this point, but I know that's a discussion related to that particular service.
Another comment was that the Ellis Volunteer Fire Department wasn't happy about Spencer annexing this property. And I'll be honest with you, the volunteer fire departments always push back a little bit against annexation because we're taking over an area that they have historically fought fires in. But from an impact financially, it's based on the valuation of that cornfield out there right now. It's a very, very small amount of the tax base that they currently have, and therefore financially, I think I can put the numbers down there, it's about $150 worth of tax revenue that they don't get. On the other side of that coin is that we have to enter into an agreement with them to pay a proportion of their debt, long-term debt that they've incurred trying to build up their fire department to protect various areas. We calculate that based again on the percentage of the tax base we're impacting. And because we're taking a very small piece of land, the amount of money that we would owe them every year for that debt service is very small, probably in the same neighborhood of the $150 a year. So it's a very small impact on the Ellis Volunteer Fire Department.
Mr. Blunt, can I ask you a question about that?
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Certainly understand your point. Just for clarity, but for annexation and all the things that come with it, would this development be happening?
What be happening?
In other words, would we be here if annexation was not possible? Would we be here? And I'm gonna get to my point in a second because I think I know what you're gonna say, but go ahead.
Well, maybe I should just let you tell me what I was going to say.
No, go ahead.
During my examination of all this, I came across an interesting map of Salisbury's annexations historically, and they've got a nice progressive map that shows you. So I would predict that if this board were not willing to annex it or didn't have the right to annex it, that Salisbury would be annexing it. But you're right, if we hadn't entered into the agreement years ago when the water system was sold to SRU that gave us a right to control who tapped on to the water and sewer in our ETJ, we would probably not be. They would be talking to Salisbury about water and sewer.
Yeah.
The project would still be going ahead. They just wouldn't be coming here.
But short of coming into a sewer system in some city and getting the services that come with that, this probably wouldn't be happening.
They couldn't build anything close to
Yeah.
this.
So that's my point. So the argument from the volunteer fire departments that you're taking money from us, well, no, we're really not, because this wouldn't exist but for this.
It would be typical strip development. There'd be a house built on the frontage, and the rest of it would stay exactly like it is.
And Mr. Blunt, for clarification, you're talking about the debt service. Is that in perpetuity, or what is the
Just
time
until the
frame?
debt service is completely paid off. So what they have to do is not just tell us how much they owe on equipment and building, they also tell us when that debt service is satisfied for each of the items. And then we create a table of payments due for the X number of years out until it's completely paid off. I think there's a minimum number. If it's less than, I think, $200 a year, you just scratch it off the books because it's not worth the paperwork to keep track of it. But with this and the annexation in the park that we did last month before last, it'll probably reach that threshold. And then on the other side, the other volunteer fire department for the industrial annexations, we're working out the same calculations with them. Again, not much money because what's there now, we're not annexing Chewy. We're not annexing Aldi. We're annexing a cornfield. And the tax valuation is very, very small compared to their overall tax base.
But I think the key message there for our board and for our citizens and our volunteer fire departments, which serve a very critical role in our community, is that we are more than offsetting any potential loss in revenue
Absolutely.
from that fire tax by them coming into our into our municipal limits.
Absolutely. Again, if we were annexing an existing major industry that had a huge amount of tax base, then the volunteer fire department would rightly be upset because we'd be taking a big chunk of revenue. In this case, in all the cases of the annexations we presented to you in the past year and a half, none of them have major impacts.
And I think what we're talking about is vacant land that's going to be developed. And so the argument has come back that, well, if it was developed, we would be getting that fire tax base. But I think to your point, the reality is if it was not annexed, if we're not able to provide the services, those developments likely would not happen.
Absolutely. Without water and sewer, which we control in the ETJ, these would remain cornfields. So this is a progressive evolution of our properties. One of the questions had to do with trash being a problem in Hawkinstown, and that the development would just make it worse. Again, trash is privately collected in Hawkinstown now, and it's collected by various people. And we even had somebody comment on the fact when somebody stops paying for their trash pickup, the trash just gets scattered out in the yards and in the road. Well, this development will be having its trash collected by the town of Spencer. So it will have no impact on the existing trash collection in the Hawkinstown area. This is just totally a misconception. The traffic from the new development will make Hawkinstown Road dangerous for people walking or biking. Response time for accidents is already slow. I can't argue the fact that this will create some more traffic on Hawkinstown Road. All the other developments are creating more traffic on Hawkinstown Road. This is an NCDOT road. They will adjust it with lane widths and lane additions as needed. They, I think, are requiring a turn lane into this, so a deceleration lane, to help manage some of the traffic coming and going from this particular project. But again, the road, from my research of traffic movements, is not overloaded at this point in any means. So again, I don't disagree with the concept there'll be more traffic. I'll show you another slide later that has to do with possibly a solution to two different problems, but I won't get ahead of myself. We talked about the growth in population. I think I estimated 380 people with this development. And somebody commented that they knew North Rowan needed students, but are there enough teachers out there to serve those students? Well, the answer is the population growth is coming anyway. If you turn down this project, these houses would get built somewhere in Rowan County, and those kids would be going to some school in Rowan County. And therefore, the school system would have to hire teachers to serve them wherever they happen to go. So North Rowan needs students. The population levels at the 3 schools is not at capacity. Not too many years ago, there were conversations about closing either North Rowan High School or Salisbury High School because there just wasn't enough student population to fill both of them. This would help keep those schools healthy as far as population goes. There's no bus service here. Internet's spotty. Young people use cell phones. That would impact the young people doing classes remotely. A holdover from the COVID days, and I certainly agree that cell service is terrible. I have to walk out to the street in front of my house to talk on my cell phone. So it's bad. I can look out some afternoons and see people down my street walking around out in the street with a phone up next to their head. So it's not a good advertisement for cell service. We're working with the cell providers trying to get better service. It means more towers. It means better antennas on the towers. It takes time to get those kind of things improved. What really gets them improved is when the more people demand cell service. So the actual growth in population will improve the cell service, not just for this project, but for other projects. The bus service, again, almost the same argument. Bus routes go where people are. They don't go to areas that are sparsely populated because they can't make the economics of it work. You add more people demand public transportation, and you might get bus service here. But you got to have more people
there too, because sitting on the Transportation Advisory Board for Salisbury, that's a current point of discussion in the northern Rowan County and our bus route through Salisbury. What the discussion is, we're actually going to be piloting a microtransit system where it's point to point as opposed to mass transit. You're looking at more of city-run Uber style transit that's going to be much more readily available for folks from whatever point they need pickup to whatever point they need delivery. So I think that becomes almost a moot point with what Salisbury is talking about doing here in the northern part of the county with how we transition our mass transit service.
That's a good point. I tried to explain that to my wife the other day, and she couldn't quite grasp how she could call the bus service and have a bus show up in front of our house. Yeah. Not sure it's going to work exactly like that, but she was excited.
Theoretically.
Yeah. My clicker has locked up, Mike. There we are. Someone commented that apartments and condos alone do not increase tax revenue. Actually, these are townhomes, but apartments and condos and townhomes, all 3 increase tax revenue. It's just a matter of who's paying it. An apartment, the apartment owner, the owner of the complex pays the property tax. In this case, these units will be individually owned. They will be valued something above $250,000. So each of those property owners will be paying property tax, not just to Rowan County, but to the town of Spencer. And I calculated some numbers based on $250,000 valuation. They're going to pay $1,375 a year to the town of Spencer. That adds up. It's almost $200,000 a year once this is completely built out at those tax rates and tax valuations. Commercial industrial development would be better for Spencer than this type. I think that was a great argument, and I totally agree with them. But this isn't an industrial site. It's not a commercial site. This is a residential area. This is a residential application that's being used. It's a higher density than what's there now. But certainly if we were trying to site an industrial plant out there, the neighborhood would be up in arms about it, and I would be here advising you not to approve it.
The reality is we have those sites coming in other areas where we've designated them, and for that and for new jobs, we have to have housing for that.
Absolutely. Good points. I'm going to hire you guys Wednesday. Mike, we're locked up again. There we are. These were comments that I heard when Salisbury held its public hearing for the annexation agreement. One comment was the townhomes would be priced as starter homes, which would attract young families with children and more transient population. They were making this comment as a negative. I'd say it's a positive. I'd love to have more children in our community, more young families. That's the best demographic for any community to have. But I also wonder how in the world something valued at $250,000 could be considered a starter home. I guess in today's economy it might be, but for someone to buy this as an investment, to take out a mortgage on a $250,000 loan and then rent it back out as a rental property, they're going to have to charge $2,500 to $3,000 a month in rent. Who, as a transient population, and I really read in that not just transient, but lower class, lower economic ability, people that might cause problems. I just don't see how in the world this can be rental property in the long run. So I don't think that's a realistic concern. It was almost humorous, the conversation they had. Apparently, Salisbury staff had been told there would be 153 townhomes. And that got some of the audience upset because we had told them there was 141 townhomes. And I tried to figure out where that misconception came from and stumbled on the fact that the company that's developing this property is called 153 Capital LLC. So I'm not sure about it, but I think that's where the 153 number came from. It's actually 141 units, just like we've told everybody since we started having public hearings. It's actually been higher than that at some times. It's been a little lower than that at times. This is the final set of engineering drawings that we've approved is 141 units. Again, the negative impact on fire and police services, I've explained that to you. Some of the comments got into the more philosophical, complaining that Salisbury and Spencer needed to be working together for more seamless planning for that area. And I will tell you that we have some efforts have already been made to have that seamless development philosophy. I have met with Salisbury's planning staff about this on several times. We have come to an agreement in principle on an annexation agreement for the whole area. And during those meetings, what we all agreed on was that this whole area on that side of Salisbury and Spencer needs to be developed as higher density residential. So we are in agreement with that. Salisbury SRU is running a 12-inch main down Hawkinstown Road for the purpose of not just serving this project, but because they think there will be other projects built in this area. So we are coordinating. And they suggested that the people that were upset get in touch with us. And again, I'll reiterate, this is the 5th public hearing we have had on this project. I have had numerous personal conversations with people who had concerns. We have been open to any kind of discussions that anybody wanted to have about the project and its impacts. So we have been willing to talk with them. We hadn't been trying to hide anything through this whole process. Little extra news added onto this one after I originally got it made. I thought that was a nice graphic of a fire hydrant. Along with the 12-inch main that will be run out to this new property, there will be 3 new fire hydrants along Hawkinstown Road. Helps with firefighting. So that's a good thing. Another very late-breaking concept that we're just starting to scratch the surface on. We've talked to you in the past about how we'd like to connect the Standback Forest Trail system to Salisbury's Greenway system by running a section of Greenway along Grants Creek. As I'll explain to you in more detail tomorrow, that is a difficult and expensive project. But if you look at that map and see that, number one, the citizens of Hawkinstown complained about the danger of the road because there aren't any sidewalks. And if we ran a sidewalk down Hawkinstown Road out 7th Street and then down Hawkinstown, it makes the same connection that that expensive Greenway would have made. And the beauty of it is 1/3 of that's already done. Salisbury requires sidewalks in their developments just like we do. So that part on the left there through the developments in Salisbury's city limits, they all have sidewalks on them. So you're looking at about a mile of sidewalk. The problem is it's not in the town proper. It's not in our municipal limits. So, and it's an NCDOT road. We can probably find grant money to build the sidewalk, but then NCDOT won't maintain it. So we have to find some way to maintain that in perpetuity. Maybe property owners would agree to maintain it if we would build. So I think that, yeah, this was the one I was telling you about earlier. This is a snapshot of Salisbury's annexation map. You can't see the little numbers in the middle of each of those blocks. But if you could see that Salisbury has had a steady march of annexing property in this area. And as I pointed out earlier, if we weren't annexing this property, they would be. They love to grow and they control the water and sewer, so they're going to annex anything that requires water and sewer. With that, I will tell you the Johnsons are here. And they probably don't want me to point them out, but they're here to talk to you. I've already talked to them this morning. It's the only reason I know who they are. They read the advertisement in the paper for the public hearing. And if you read that, you realize that the surveyor identified the property lines by referencing other properties. And one of those properties they own. So when they saw that reference, they were concerned we might be annexing their property. And I told them we're not. And I've had 2 other calls this week of people concerned that we might be annexing their property. And I told them the same thing. We're not. We're just annexing this 20 acres. Any questions?
Board, questions at this point?
I was asked by a resident out there if I could tell them where they would see another project like this. I've found some apartments, but I haven't really found townhouses.
I can find out for you. As far as the magnitude of impact, any of the developments down on the western end of Hawkinstown Road have about the same number of homes as this development will have. Mm-hmm. The one on Old Montsville Road going out of Salisbury has something like 240 homes in it. They are single-family homes on quarter-acre lots, so the density works out to about the same as the townhome project does, but obviously not the same physical type of building.
They're going to be good examples on the Concord area of where this sort of project has happened, where you kind of get that rural area, but then you also get the townhomes that go into that area and how they coexist.
I have got some. They're not really artistic renderings, but at least elevations of typical townhomes that show you what they look like. And basically, probably some of the apartment complexes you've seen are very similar to this. Mm-hmm. Usually apartment complexes will have a common alleyway into door system or stairs going up and down. This will have an individual front porch and door for each one of the units, but they're 2 stories high with a peaked roof. A lot of landscaping out in front of them. So I can probably find an example for you and I'll let you know where it is and people can go look at it.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Blunt. With that, we're going to open it up to our public hearing segment. And so we do have one individual signed up, Mr. Albert Johnson. And we'll invite you to come forward. As a reminder, you have 3 minutes to speak. We do have a timer that we'll have to help you out. If you will, just state your name again and your address for the record.
Albert W. Johnson. We live at 350 Timberwolf Lane, Salisbury, North Carolina. And we own property in Hawkinstown on Hawkinstown Road. Mr. Blunt plainly answered my question. I just was concerned about my property being annexed in this process. And he said that our property would not be annexed. And I was concerned about maybe the taxes might go up, and that was my concern. Other than that, I'm satisfied as long as my properties just stay like it is. Mm-hmm. And I think he explained that our property would not be annexed into this situation. We have property that run all the way down I have a home on Hawkinstown Road, which is 704 Hawkinstown Road. Right across the street, we have 2.5 acres that run down the Grant Creek. And I just wanted all of the property that my family owned just to stay as is.
Understandable.
Thank you for allowing us this time to speak.
Well, thank you. Thanks for expressing concern and interest and being here tonight.
Yes, and this is our third time coming to a meeting, and I just like to say this, I just really like the way you open with prayer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank y'all for coming.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
So, Board, I think that, raises an interesting point, with the Johnsons and what they have to say. You have some residents in the area that have expressed concern over the current service they get from a county perspective, right? And not knowing who their providers are. And then you have others in that more rural area that may have land that's not developed, that don't want it, that want to keep it within the county. I guess what I would like to say, Mr. Blunt, is to make sure that we provide, as we move forward, an opportunity for those residents in the area that perhaps do want to be annexed and be able to tie on to SRU and those services, to have that opportunity, but also to make it very clear to those that don't want to be part of that, that they don't have to be. I think that's been the concern in the past. At least what we've heard is maybe that opportunity hasn't been offered to certain residents in the past. But I think going forward now with this project, to provide an option either way for folks in the area, whether they want to be a part of the town of Spencer or whether they want to keep things as is. I think we have the flexibility now to provide that.
We do, and I'll tell you, the Hawkinstown Loop Road has some fairly large parcels of undeveloped land. And I have heard from numerous people wanting to find out if water and sewer would be available and if we would be interested in annexing them in. So as you stated, there's some people that embrace the idea of annexing into the town of Spencer. We have to be a little careful about hop skipping around, taking in a parcel here and a parcel there. It has to be economically feasible for us to recommend to you to annex a property. We would prefer that a group of properties or a larger parcel that's going to be subdivided come in as a group. It makes it easier for us to provide services. If you have a trash truck, for example, driving down Hawkinstown Road, and it stops at one house and then it goes down 6 houses and stops at another house and goes down 5 houses and stops at another house, that's a very inefficient way to collect garbage. So we want to have an open door policy. We, as I just showed you, might consider running a sidewalk down Hawkinstown Road. That will certainly make it easier for the residents of Hawkinstown in general to come visit our town. It will bring them right to the 7th Street trailhead for the Standback Forest. It will make them more a part of Spencer. So we will certainly have an open door and an open telephone. People want to call and talk to me about it, I'm always available.
For the benefit of the Johnsons, it used to be that the way the law was structured, that it would allow municipalities to go in and involuntarily annex certain areas where we could go in and basically say, we're annexing you in. We're not allowed to do that anymore. It has to be voluntary. You have to ask us as property owners to annex you in. And so that's what these property owners have done. And others have expressed interest in that sort of thing. But as long as you don't want to be annexed in, you don't ever have to worry about being annexed in. Yeah.
Mr. Blunt, there was one other question I had, and I don't know if you could answer this or not. All the way through this, when there's a description of the property, there's one parcel there that is listed as unknown owner.
It's actually mentioned as one of the adjacent properties.
Mm-hmm.
The properties that have been purchased all had identified property owners and they entered into sales agreements. There might be some question that was mentioned about the title, the clear title on one of the pieces of property. That's up to the developer and the property owner to resolve, and they resolved it to their satisfaction, or they wouldn't be spending millions of dollars to build on it. But I'm sure there are numerous properties in that area that have been handed down through generations that at some point they may have lost track of who's supposed to own it. Again, it's typical in that type of development area. Nothing we need to worry about that.
Okay.
All right. So, Board, that's the only public comment we have for the hearing. Ms. Ward, have we received any written correspondence?
No, sir.
Okay. Hearing that, is there a motion to close the public hearing at this time?
So moved.
So motion by Mr. Muhammad, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sledge, all in favor? All right, all opposed? And the public hearing is closed. We will consider this on our agenda for our regular meeting on Tuesday. All right, board, so we'll move forward with the review of our March 12th agenda for next Tuesday. And so as we go through this, again, keep in mind if there are any specific items we want to add to the consent agenda for kind of blanket approval next week, please let me know. And so we will begin with call to order and then the invocation. Do I have a volunteer for the invocation on Tuesday?
I'll take that.
All right, thank you, Ms.
You want, well,
Sledge.
do you want to do it?
I don't mind.
You missed the last time. You got here late.
I'll do it.
Okay.
All right,
Give
Mr.
it-
Muhammad.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Be on time.
I should be on time.
That's right.
So we'll do the invocation, then we'll have our pledge of allegiance, and then we'll address any additions or deletions to the agenda and then adopt that agenda. Are there any items at this point that we need to consider for addition?
Not from staff.
Okay. Very good. We'll move then to recognitions. Are there any recognitions that we need to go ahead and add to the agenda that we know we will be making on Tuesday evening?
I'd like to do one,
Okay.
and recognition for the Rowan Medical Center grant.
Okay. Very good. So we will have Ms. Sledge on the agenda for that. Any others? All right. Hearing none. We'll then move to our public comment section, and then we will move to our consent agenda. Right now, the approval of minutes from our pre-agenda and regular meeting from February are on the consent agenda. And again, consider as we go through these items, are there any other items that we may want to add to the consent agenda? The next item will be to consider adopting ordinance 24-05, that is the Hawkins Meadow annexation that we had the public hearing on this evening. That should stay as a regular agenda item. The next will be to consider awarding a 2024 Town of Spencer School Safety and Support Grant Program. You have some information in front of you this evening that's been provided. And with that, I will turn that over to Mr. Franzese to give us a little background.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. Yes, so you'll recall that our budget for this year included about $20,000 to support our local public schools. And a few months back, the board approved our recommended grant program. And we had an application window and worked with the elementary, middle, and high schools to solicit proposals for this program. We delayed this action for a month because they needed a little more time. And what you have before you are a proposal from the high school and then a joint proposal between the elementary and middle schools. So we are prepared at this point to recommend awarding of these of the grants per the program. And if you have any specific questions, we do have Ryan here and Heather here. Both worked, particularly Ryan worked closely with the schools to facilitate their applications. But we can answer questions. We could talk about it again on Tuesday, or if you see fit, you could put it on the consent agenda.
Okay. Board, any questions at this point? And then do you want to have this as a regular agenda item or add it to the consent agenda?
I think it needs to be regular. I think it'd be good if the community hears what some of this money is going to. And I was impressed with what I read on the grants. And Ryan, you've done a great job on it. But it's hard getting things in sometimes and meeting deadlines and all, but I was impressed with it.
All right.
Could they, I know this is kind of short notice, could they be here to talk about it? Tell us what they're doing?
We could ask.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great.
Okay. So we will keep that as a regular agenda item and then ask that we have some representatives from the schools to come and talk with us about the application request. All right. The next item is to consider adopting various documents for the 17th Street Stormwater Improvements Project, establishing the grant project fund, and authorizing the town manager to execute a corresponding task order with Hazen and Sawyer. I know there's a presentation, I think, planned for this, and so I would ask that we keep this on the regular agenda item and get an update on Tuesday.
Yes, and actually, you'll be getting a presentation tomorrow
Okay.
about this and some of the other work that Hazen's doing for us.
Okay, great.
So questions on that should wait till we've seen the presentation then, probably?
That would probably be a good idea.
Okay.
The next item is to consider adopting Resolution 24-07, directing the town clerk to investigate a annexation petition for 1840 Highway 29. And I would assume that we'll get a presentation on that on Tuesday as well, so that should stay a regular agenda item. And then similarly, as we request that, it looks like that staff has been proactive, and as we request that, we will also receive the certificate of sufficiency for proposed Highway 29, or 1840 Highway 29 annexation. So again, I would suggest we keep that regular agenda items. And then for the same annexation, to actually set the public hearing for that date, Resolution 24-08. And then the next item will be Resolution 24-09 to authorize the Rural Downtown Economic Development Grant application, and that we would commit a 5% local match. Do you plan a presentation on that item?
So I would actually note that Joe Morris is with us in person today. We have a special treat, and
We're graced with royalty.
and I don't know that that's going to be the case on Tuesday.
How about that?
How are things in the Capitol?
It's a real treat to have you here tonight.
So I might suggest tonight would be a good night to discuss this, and you could decide whether you're satisfied to move it to consent, or if we should
Okay.
discuss it again on
That
Tuesday.
sounds great.
So when I was asked about how things were in the Capitol earlier today, I responded by saying, I have changed more diapers in the last month than I have ever done in my previous 65 years. So that's a reflection on state government, or?
I was going to ask,
Well, I don't know.
legislature, or, yeah.
Well, I mean, somewhere I read that you change politicians for the same reason you
Yeah.
change
There's
diapers.
something to that. There's something to that. So, in all seriousness, we've had a remarkable opportunity avail itself to the town through the Department of Commerce and this Rural Downtown Economic Development Grant Program. And as I have been working on putting together the budgets and the documents that we will hopefully be able to submit based on the town board's willingness to go forward, it reminded me of the fact that we've always had a budget of about $2.3 million for this project. And what has happened is that our designers scaled back really the quality of the park to comport with our budget, that we could, the town could afford about $225,000 from the supplanted funds, what ended up being $900,000 from the Rural Transformation Fund, and $500,000 from the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund. And so the Department of Commerce came out with this new grant program, and it was suggested to us by the folks at the Department of Commerce. And when we inquired back to them what might be the best type of thing that we might use the funds for, their instantaneous reaction was gap funding for your park. Because they knew that the park was going to cost I think it was $2,340,000 to begin with. And so it would have, to do that would have required more than an $800,000 match from the town, which we did not have. And so what the designers have done is they've gone back, they have looked at up-to-date cost estimates. I'll sort of add in a little bit of supposition on my part. I think that the Department of Commerce ran into this with a number of projects where there was escalation in prices for these grants that had been awarded. And so they kind of knew this was out here for communities like us. One of the things that we did that was very smart, it turned out to be based on something that the town manager said to me. I'll give him credit for this. When the core program came out, he said, they're not giving us any money. They're not doing any, they're providing technical services, but there might be some money at the end of this available to us. And so this specific grant program is available to Main Street communities and communities that have participated in the core program and communities that are tier 1 or tier 2 counties, and we're a tier 2 county. So I think there's one other criteria that didn't apply to us. Main Street communities, I guess, was the one. So anyhow, we've gone back to the evaluation of the budget. I was trying to think of a way to explain the budget, and the term that came up in my mind was fuzzy math. But I'm going to try. Fuzzy math. We've been creative, and the designers have restored the finishes that we had originally sought that we will, if we're able to receive this grant, we'll be able to afford to do. In addition to that, one of the things that was identified in the core planning process was the idea that we would be able to enhance economic development in our community, to attract businesses that support not only outdoor recreation but the tourism economy. And my reaction to that being an eligible funding criteria was that we have these shelf spaces next to Town Hall. And so we have had some cost estimating done to provide some numbers for that. The thing that is required as part of this particular application that's different from the Rural Transformation Fund was there was no match in that. And in this particular grant program, we're eligible up to $850,000, but we would have to provide a 5% match. Going to this issue of being creative, perhaps, the town has already budgeted $50,000 for the pylon sign. That would be an eligible activity for this grant. And so we're not asking the board to appropriate additional fundings, but to just sort of acknowledge that if you allow us to go forward with this application, we would use that as our match. And we do, the grant application does require a resolution from the board that says, yes, if we receive the funds, we will provide the match. So that is, I appreciate you letting me give that overview at the pre-agenda meeting. I will not be here on Tuesday night, but hopefully I'll be relaxing and watching on Zoom.
And changing diapers.
Diapers is it's a daily occurrence. So anyhow, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have related to this now. I don't know, did you want them to take action tonight or just wait till Tuesday? Or
I think, I don't know that we need action tonight other than if you would like it on the consent agenda, that you'd be welcome to. Otherwise, you can consider it Tuesday. But the only other thing I would add is that I don't think I heard you mention, Joe, is the other requirement as part of this is a job creation or retention element of one job for every $12,500 we would receive in grant funding. And so we've put a little matrix together as part of these materials, and that kind of shows us how many jobs would need to be identified. For example, at $849,000, that's 68 jobs that we would need to be able to quantify as either creating or retaining related to this. And Joe's already started getting his wheels turning. But when you think of some existing businesses, some of the new restaurants, some of the jobs at the Transportation Museum, and then specifically with the lease spaces, there's some jobs that we know would be able to be tied to those spaces and so on. So that's part of the work that we're going to be needing to do is quantifying some of these jobs to retain and jobs that would be created through the park investment and the shell space investment. And of course, again, we've included the sign that we've talked about for a long time as part of this, and that's going to give an opportunity for other businesses as well in the shopping center and such as part of that. But
Board, other questions? All right.
Joe, I always have questions.
Sure.
First of all, the deadline on this is April 1st, I believe. I read that.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we know when the decision will be made on the grant?
April 18th.
I'm sorry?
April 18th.
April 18th?
Yes.
Okay. So then how does the possibility of additional funding impact the start of the project, including the bid letting?
I think that I know there's been a little bit of movement in this. Our most recent conversation with Jeff, which was that finished 2 days ago, we're hoping to have the bid documents out in March. So we'll have bids back in April. And then based on what we receive in bids, we would be able to negotiate with the lowest responsible bidder.
Mm-hmm.
And so it should not affect the timeline that we're all operating on now. I think I've mentioned, I've heard in conversations at the board level before that the decision by Winterfest to be not on this site next year is going to alleviate the pressure. Is maybe not the right word, but it will give us a little breathing room to have the park open a year from now.
Yeah.
Probably around April of 2025.
Yeah. The plan with Winterfest now is to have a long string of vendor tents that will be backed up against the construction barrier. So, I mean, that's what we're working with at this point. This would, I don't know, this might not even be able to be tied to this, but I think I read in here that were there any possibility of using demolition funds for the old town hall?
So we did some investigation on that, and we found out that this particular grant program would not pay for demolition. And so I'm going to hand it back off to Peter because he's dug into it a little bit different. But there is a demolition fund that's through the Department of Commerce, and there's a timeline of 3 years of.
There's a few pieces of it.
So he knows more about it.
Yeah.
So it's the same. I guess we'll pause that demolition talk to say you've probably seen in the paper about Spencer getting a grant related to the health center, and you'll recall that really starting about a year ago. So that's going to be coming to you in April, and the way that works is that state funding for this project is essentially passing through us.
Right.
That's the building reuse grant, and the same arm of Department of Commerce has also the demolition grant, and they have some buffers on either end that a building for that has to be vacant for 3 years, and then it has to either go to private sector redevelopment or not be used for public use for another 3 years.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
And so that's a possibility. We're exploring this as it relates to the 6th Street building. But with some of the other elements we're exploring with that related to the fire station and the right location for that project and the unknowns of where we're still trying to head with that, that's the part we don't know, is whether we would be able to say yes, no public use for 3 years, et cetera. But once we get to the end of all of that, we'll know better, because it may be that we determine, yes, we're certainly going to demolish that building and then put it out there for private sector redevelopment. Then it would, in that case, it would very easily fit within the parameters of that Commerce demolition grant.
The other thing, I wondered about the feasibility of adding an elevator to the library. Is that something that could be considered at some point?
You know, in our conversations with the commerce staff, I mean, as it relates to this grant, I would be surprised if that would fit within what they're.
Okay.
I mean, that's certainly something we've talked about and is of interest, but as it relates to this particular downtown economic development grant, I'm not sure that that's going to be something that fits within there.
I think I can say with a high level of certainty it would not qualify.
Okay.
Would not be a qualifying expense. Okay. But it's a great question. It never hurts to ask. Never hurts to ask.
Board, any other questions?
What kind of, and I probably should know this, but I'm gonna feign my ignorance and ask anyway. Over here, I know we sent out the sketch and we looked at it. I think a local architect kind of did some mock-ups for this bid. But what are we talking about size-wise and space-wise over here? And I know it's out there, but just specifics, I'm not sure if I know it, it's rattling around in my head.
In very round terms, there's one that's 2,400 and one that's about 1,200.
That's correct. And then those are the two spaces furthest away from this part of the building. In between is the largest space that's about 3,200 square feet.
Right.
And the way this estimate was put together, we may be able to do all of it, and with targeting of the other two spaces for lease use and the restrooms constructed in them, et cetera, and the space most adjacent to us, so that they're more ready to go to be usable for public use, public events, et cetera, and at a much more minimal price than the other two spaces that would need the restroom constructions.
And we've had a lot of interest in those other spaces, I think, from a lease perspective. Problem is when people look at them, they understand the amount of capital that's going to have to be invested into getting them upfit. And so I think that's what we're talking about now, is right now they're just a shell, getting them to a point where there's minimal additional investment by those that are leasing, that will make them more attractive to those that are interested.
So the two activities or two of the activities that are eligible for this would be, lease available for lease for retail, commercial, and the other is nonprofit. And the town is currently using the 3,200 square feet as support space for Winterfest. And we would be able to continue to do that. And what we're essentially suggesting is that we do drywall, the restroom upfits, and the 1,200 and the 2,400 square foot space. The 3,200 square foot space, there's already a connection to our restroom, so we don't have to provide that. And so it's really a great opportunity for the town to get some funds to bring those spaces to a more usable condition.
And I think it precedes me, but I believe the original intent of the project here that happened was to get these spaces to that level, but that was part of the value engineering. Yeah. That resulted in them being kind of more of a rough stub in.
And the park.
Yes. Yeah. So really, it'll be exciting if we're successful in this to be able to bring all that to fruition. That was really part of the original vision.
Any other questions? All right. Board, is this something you want to add to the consent agenda?
I think so. No.
Should we take actions on it tonight?
We can. I guess the only question I have is between now and Tuesday, is Joe going to be working on applying?
Honestly, I would suggest just waiting to Tuesday. We've already written the resolution, has Tuesday's date on it.
Okay.
Let's work for the town clerk. She could probably stand a little bit of a break.
Okay.
So if going on the consent agenda just makes it super easy. So.
All right. So the staff recommendation is to add it to consent. Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay. Great. All right, next item will be our departmental reports. I would ask our board, is there anything that you've seen in the departmental reports in your package that you would like additional clarification on, or any additional information that you want our staff to know about so that they can adequately prepare for their presentations on Tuesday?
The project with the 7th Street stormwater,
17th Street.
17th Street, is that part, is the CCAP part of that too? Or
It is
not?
a different project.
Right,
It's two separate pieces. The Hazen and Sawyer piece is going to be the upper part of 17th Street that will be piped closest, I guess, to Salisbury Avenue. And then the CCAP portion is the lower portion that's the stream on both sides of the road. So they're two different projects, but kind of working in tandem with one another. And I
okay.
believe we're getting an update on all of that tomorrow, correct?
So the Hazen and Sawyer will be here tomorrow to give an update on what they're providing, and Joel has an update in the departmental report for Public Works on the CCAP.
Okay.
And I'm sure we can talk about it though tomorrow as well.
Okay.
at
So,
any
Ms.
point.
Sledge, anything in particular on the CCAP that,
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I was just concerned whether, how the two projects work together.
they work together, but they're two separate
Two
projects?
separate projects. And wondered about if monies had been expended, or, you know, if money was out there that was due or payable or whatever, could that be a part of the grant, or would that be a part of the grant or whatever?
Well, and so keep in mind with the 17th Street stuff for Hazen and Sawyer, that's a separate grant that we've already gotten for the design and then
Oh,
ultimately for
okay,
the construction.
okay, okay.
And the CCAP itself is also a grant. We're just providing in-kind
Right,
labor
right.
during construction.
Okay.
All right, anything else on departmental reports? All right, anything on the town manager report or anything additional from the town manager you need clarification on for Tuesday? Okay. We'll also then have our request and comments from the mayor and board, and then executive session as is, if it is needed, and then we'll adjourn. Is there a requirement for executive session this evening? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to turn it over to the manager as we enter into our annual planning session 1. With the abundance of people we have here with us tonight.
We do.
The important people are here. I'm
We
glad.
have the citizens that get the gold star. How about that?
That's right.
And, you know, I actually might invite everyone to get out of the back row and just come forward and join in the conversation. Because that's what we're here to do tonight. But yes, so this is an exciting start to the season, the budget season. There's been some preliminary things already in the works, but this really kicks it off, the process that happens between now and May when the recommended budget will come. And what tonight's about is to start our process that will continue tomorrow at more of a high level and look at the strategic priorities that were identified last year when we spent our time together. And so that's the first thing that's going to happen tonight is we're going to go over those and talk about it. And I'm going to invite staff to comment as needed on those. And then we'll invite our community members to comment as they see fit. And then the elected officials will also have it opportunity to add your comments, and the idea behind all that is to start to set the table leading into tomorrow, where we'll delve a little more into the details and start looking ahead. Tonight's a little bit more about taking stock of what's happened since last year. So any questions about that? Mayor, any welcoming or introductory comments you'd like to offer?
I'm going to have a request for 3 to 5 minutes so that everybody can do what they need to do and be ready to dive in here in just a few moments.
Sounds good with me.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Sounds like a
Okay.
plan.
So we're taking a
We're
pause
gonna
then,
take
it sounds like.
5-minute pause.
Okay.
All right.
Figured it'd be some people.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so again, we're going to review the priorities that were established at our process a year ago. And they are in the packet, and for anyone that has the printed agenda, they're listed on the back if you want to follow along. But in the packet, there's that page, and then there's an additional page that has predominantly the same things in a different format. That was something that we put in our budget document. And then there's a few pages following that have some more narrative around, not necessarily all of these, but specifically, but the theme is that they're touching on the same. So what I'm basically going to do is we'll go down the list and offer comments, and again from staff, and we'll go from there. So the first overall key priority area is infrastructure, facilities, and properties, with the first task or strategy on that being around parks and recreation coordination and staffing. A year ago, that was identified as a need for our future. With all the infrastructure we're building around recreation, we need also to have the staff to activate it and offer the programming. And from a budget standpoint, we're still working towards that. We've identified some other significant needs that we're focusing on first, and we'll hear more about that later in the public safety area. But what I'll say, and I think I'll invite Joe to speak shortly, is our core program that we went through last year, I think, helped us go down that road of starting to develop this framework. And we're going to talk some more about this tomorrow, and looking forward how we take that next step of one of the core outcomes. One of the recommendations was around the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. And so we're going to start to explore that a little more tomorrow, as well as some information from Joel staffing wise about where we think from the park maintenance standpoint, where we think we're heading. But that's what that one was about. And Joe, anything you want to add in related to the core program?
Well, more specifically to the strategic acquisition.
Sure.
And for us, in the case of Spencer, over the last year or so, strategic acquisition has amounted to people lining up trying to give us property. So we haven't, but it's been really strategically donated property, in that we got the 2.8 acres that overlook at the Yadkin River Trailhead. We got 45 acres donated from the Land Trust for Standback Educational Forest. And then we had the donation of the Carter House and property that's on 10th Street, right? 11th Street. And so we have had all of this avail itself to the town, and it's sort of tied to the adage that is cliche really about the dog that chases the car and catches the car. What do you do with it? And that's kind of where we are, is that we have these wonderful resources that are now publicly owned, and we're in a position of being able to deliver a super high quality product to the community and the surrounding community. And so I know that the town has been working to implement the curbside collection, which of garbage, which theoretically opens up some labor possibilities for maintenance. But what it doesn't really address is the idea of the management administration of Parks and Recreation. And so what I would like to have a more full-throated conversation with the board about tomorrow is the idea of what would it take to implement one of the strategies of the core plan. I think that's what Peter was asking me to address, which is to create a Parks and Recreation advisory committee to explore the possibility of additional Parks and Recreation staff. And so that's something I would, I don't know how much detail you want to get into tonight. It's up to the board. But we have just about 20 minutes tomorrow to explore that a little bit. But the general idea is that we would put together a group of, we have some super talented people in this community that have recreation expertise. A lot of people, retired, active, interested, and I think we would be able to put together an advisory committee that could come up with a model, help generate a job description, identify some of the needs in the community beyond facilities, like event coordination, for example. And so maybe I should stop and see what.
Sure. And the only other things I'll just add to this topic in general is, you mentioned the Carter House, and we last month talked about the other grant opportunity that we are pursuing related to that, with 2 different grants between the Robertson Foundation to help with some design needs, and then pursuing the Lowe's grant for some implementation funds for the Carter House itself. So these opportunities have continued to work in our favor, and we hope we'll be successful with it. And then the other thing, just staffing wise, is, and it's kind of a higher level topic overall, is one of the things I'm hoping we'll be able to incorporate in the budget next year is to do some semblance of an update of our classification study and pay plan, to make sure, one, we're staying competitive, but also to make sure that as we have new positions that weren't part of the plan when it was adopted a few years back, we're capturing those, and things that we made changes to, et cetera. And so I'm trying to get a budget figure to incorporate into the budget for that work, so that in the next fiscal year we can make sure we're staying up to date staffing wise, and something like future recreation positions, that would be a great time to get that analyzed and incorporated into what we to help with that, to know what we're dealing with going forward. So
I know we're going to dive into this more tomorrow, but I think collectively over the last year, at least I've heard, and maybe I'm not hearing the message right, but I think I have from our board, is that we do need to move forward with establishing a Parks and Recreation department, figuring out someone to lead that department. And so I totally agree with involving folks on that committee to kind of develop a job description and all of that. What I wouldn't want to see is us plan to just do that and only that in this upcoming fiscal year, but for us to plan to go ahead and implement that entire plan so that we are actually establishing that within the next fiscal year. I think we have too much going for us right now to wait on that. I think if we're able to capitalize with all the assets that we have, all the grants that we're going after, somebody that can live and breathe that on a daily basis is going to be is not only going to help us address what we currently have, but move that even forward beyond, and really kind of position us for some of these other projects and everything. So I guess my ask would be that as we start to talk about that tomorrow, that we keep in mind doing this this committee, but also committing to making this a position and a priority for the next fiscal year. And I know that's got a budgetary impact. We've talked about things related to fire department staffing and all of those. But again, I think this is a priority we've talked about for a few years, that I think now is the time that we need to push it forward.
So just to piggyback on your leadership on this is to say that the town park, if all goes well, will be coming online about a year from now. But it would really be great if you had someone in that leadership position, administrative position, on board at some point during the construction of the park, so that they can see where everything is and understand it from the day you cut the ribbon to open it. So that would be a great advantage to whoever that person might be. to have a full understanding of what's going on.
Well, that, and to be involved on the initial planning of things like the Carter House.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
programming and those sorts of
Yeah,
things.
I mean, you could literally get a desk and a chair and move into the Carter House, right? And it's just in some pristine condition. But having the opportunity to do the design work and involve, Peter told me a story about a week or so ago that someone from the community, the director of Horizons Unlimited, asked for a tour, and he took her there. And apparently this was like, the timing's really good because they take children there over several weeks during the spring and early summer, and to have her input, for example, on how the design is done. This is just we're at a great space in terms of moving into a really necessary community amenity for Spencer.
So again, we'll delve into this further tomorrow, but this is just to kind of recap, these topics, and we'll go through and then again we'll get comments from the community and comments from y'all and as such. But so the next topic is around community planning and development, with the strategies within that, including exploring zoning changes to support growth impacts, focus on affordable housing, specifically the CDBG program, and promoting downtown business. And we've certainly seen some of the meetings we've had over the last year have involved quite a bit of this, between rezonings in certain areas, some of the studies. We've certainly launched the CDBG program, and we're to the point where we have our first project out to bid for the first home renovation with that. And then promoting downtown business, looking for ways to support that, our economic, our entrepreneurship initiative, and getting that off the ground, and we'll hear more about that tomorrow. But certainly we've had a lot of new businesses open up in the last year. That's been a great addition. So I think this has been a great area where we've been able to see some progress. And I don't know, Steve, if you want to, I don't know if Steve wants to jump in, and Kyle and Joe certainly join as needed.
Yeah, let me piggyback on what Joe said initially, is that people are lining up to give us properties. And I want you to understand that that doesn't happen unless other things happen. And part of it is relationships with people that have the properties, and you can thank your staff for developing and keeping those relationships strong. But the other part of it is you guys moving forward in a progressive nature, where people who have these properties that they would like to give us trust you to see things good happen in our community. Whereas in the past, they may not have trusted the leadership of this town, and therefore they weren't willing to give those properties. So moving forward, we need to keep that same attitude going. We did present you sometime in the middle of last year with some studies of the US Highway 29 corridor and the South Salisbury corridor. You'll hear more about that tomorrow. The part on the north of town, we sort of backed off the rezonings a little bit because we were waiting for the Yadkin River District study to come back to us, which will happen in the near future, to make sure that those recommendations meshed before we started some large-scale rezoning along that corridor. Surprisingly, the message got out, and I have heard from half a dozen property owners in that corridor already wanting to rezone their property, and y'all have approved 2 of them in the past couple of months. So you're not going to have resistance out there. What you're going to have is people beating down the door to make that happen. So it's a good problem to have. There are other places in the town that we need to think about rezonings, but we've been lucky that I've been able to bring them to you a couple at a time so that you can hear the property owner's presentation on why they want to rezone it, what they plan to do with it. That's better than me showing you a map that says this is our big picture and that's why we want to make these little bitty changes. We'll do it either way and make it work out. So we will be coming to you with that. Tomorrow we have a little more elaborate presentation on all that.
And I'd like to give you a quick update on the Community Development Block Grant Program because my presentation tomorrow is not necessarily focused on that. As Peter mentioned, we do have our first project out to bid. Our bid opening is actually next Wednesday, and we're preparing our second project for bid. So we are where we want to be, and we are soon going to be entering the construction phase for that. I did want to give you two brief updates related to future potential opportunities for affordable housing. We have heard intimations from John Brooks, who is the CDBG section chief with the Department of Commerce, that apparently they do have a large amount of unspent funds that they are trying to connect communities with. So there are potentially opportunities for the town, if it's, if this is the direction that y'all want to go, to apply for a second round of funding. We will need to demonstrate timely expenditure of our current funds before we can apply for additional funding, but we have heard that that is a likely prospect for us. So that's the major update on that. Additionally, and again, I'm really trying to get this project, the CDBG project, finished out this year. But if there is a need for an extension, I have heard that they will be amenable to granting us an extension. But I'm not planning on applying for an extension because we really would like to get these funds spent. So happy to report progress on that. And hopefully this year we will complete construction on all of the projects. Do you have any questions for me while I'm here?
So remind us again how many projects we have anticipated or approved, and then kind of what the timeline is for getting all of those out to bid. If we want them completed by the end of the year, obviously we're a fourth of the way through it now, or getting close to it.
So we have a list of from 1 to, I believe, like 11 or 12. We're not going to be able to fund all of those projects. There are, once you get down to past, 6 or 7, those people will be on a wait list. Especially given the construction costs, we've been careful not to outright approve more than we know we will be able to fund. So we've given approval to, I believe, the first 6 people on that list, with the next on decreasing tier of likelihood of getting to them on the wait list. I will tell you that there are some of the households on our list who, through additional follow through on things like credit reports and our attorney doing title opinions, that issues have arisen and that those people have moved down to the bottom of the list. The nature of CDBG is complex. That's kind of why it's taken so long. As people's financial situations change or their household characteristics change, their eligibility changes. And even if they were approved up to the point of, we're ready to work with them, if something substantial has changed in the household, then their eligibility changes. So the list is a very fluid list, but we're moving down at a speed we feel comfortable at. Now, in terms of getting all these projects finished by December of 2024, I would say that would be a wonderful thing. But I really can't tell you that that's going to be the most reasonable outcome. All I can tell you is that the process that we're required to do in posting these bids on the electronic vendor portal, which means throughout the entire state, there are contractors who are getting notification of our bids. We do hope that that will get us a diverse list of qualified contractors so that we can have more projects open at any one time. One of the challenges that we have historically in Salisbury is a smaller pool of contractors who are bidding on our projects. But even through posting on the electronic vendor portal, we've had interest in our solicitations coming from new contractors. And so if the trend continues with that, we hope to have multiple, 2, 3, 4 projects ongoing by summer. So that would help us with our meeting our timelines. So we're hoping on that.
Okay. And then for those that aren't funded in this round, if we were to get additional funding, would we have to start that process over again, or would we be able to use those that are next in line?
I think that the board has the discretion to prioritize those people who have previously applied, and bring them to the top of the list. Even if we do have to open up another round of applications, it's certainly up to you to automatically bump those up to the top of our list.
Are you going to open the second round up after you finish this first round, or are you going to open it up?
Well, keeping in mind that the second round is purely hypothetical, but the reason I'm bringing it up is if we're talking about continued investment in affordable housing, it is an option.
Yeah.
But yes, we anticipate it wouldn't be until later in the year, once we've demonstrated expenditures, that we're meeting our expenditures with the state, that they would even consider allowing us to apply again.
Right.
I suppose it's possible that we could open up a second round of funding even while this one is still ongoing.
Right.
But that's something we'll have to determine later this year.
Okay.
You're required to have a diverse group of contractors working, is that correct? Minority and women-owned businesses and all the other.
Correct. Now, it is we've got a lot of things going for us in that regard. First, the list of qualified contractors that the Salisbury Community Development Corporation typically works with are like 90% women or African-American owned businesses. And when we post on the North Carolina electronic vendor portal, it automatically goes out to the historically underutilized businesses list. So we would certainly be meeting our requirements for that.
Other questions? All right. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
All right, so our next area is public safety, and certainly there's been a lot of movement in this area, and it's been a very big priority over the last year, both with police and specifically the proactive public safety strategy that resulted in some additional positions, and with fire, the need to expand our staff, facilities, and equipment. We've talked at length about the staff. Our facility needs are still there, and we're still trying to work through those. And then with the equipment, we've got the new engine on order, scheduled to be delivered later this year. But I invite both our chiefs to come up and add in whatever comments they'd like in these areas.
How are you this afternoon?
Good.
So I want to hit on all three of those. My presentation tomorrow has nothing to do with those. So staffing, obviously we've been blessed. When I look back over March 1st was 3 years I've been in this position. And I set goals for 3 to 5 years. And again, I'm blessed with the support of Peter and you as our board that we've blown every one of those out of the water, which is nice. Staffing's difficult. It's still a struggle, even with the open positions. We'd opened our engineer process. I was very confident that we had 2 strong candidates internally. They tested last Saturday, and they came out on the top just as I felt that they would. However, we did have 3 people that did not show up, or 2 backed out, 1 didn't show up, and 1 failed. So we have reopened that process. It's now open until filled. And we're hopeful that maybe we can identify someone else internally. If not, we'll keep our fingers crossed that someone feels led to apply and work for us. Tentative start date for that was and still is, at least for the 2, on April 15th. So there at least will be some addition. The firefighters, I think as I look today, we're up to 11, and it's been open for 4 days, which is amazing. And hope that trend continues. That's going to be open until the end or the beginning of April. With a tentative start date of June 10th. Just as Peter had said, we're kind of at a standstill with facilities. Obviously, my ask of staff was huge, so I don't feel that I should come up here and say, hey, I need $11 million for a fire station addition. But I think even more than that is exploring the idea of cost analysis of addition of $10 million to a current structure that's 22 years old, or an $11 million cost for a whole brand new facility on a different site, which is obviously where our old town hall is. I know we had some just simple discussions with the firm that did our design, and The costs were pretty comparable. Again, with the understanding that it's like $580 a square foot of construction costs, so it's not going to be cheap. Equipment, I talked to Atlantic today. I actually was asking for sponsorship for our fire camp. We're still on track to return back to Wisconsin. If I say that, my wife makes fun of me because she says it's Wisconsin, not Wisconsin, but
It's Wisconsin.
right.
Wisconsin.
We're supposed to return there on September 24th for final inspection. We'll spend 3 days there going through the ins and outs, paint, everything that they've done with the truck, put it together. Anticipate about a month after that, maybe sooner, pending there's no corrections, that we'll take delivery of that truck. And then about a month for us to put all the equipment on it, hose, and put that in service.
So I will say, we're doing pretty well, because I heard last night from several other municipalities, the lead time is now 48 months.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was Chief Smith, who's on our department, but is the fire marshal for the city of Salisbury, went with us for our pre-con meeting, and they were trying to go behind backs and buy a fire truck while they're up there, because the city's been told the same thing. It's 3 to 4 years before you're going to see your fire truck if you sign today. So, again, it was a big commitment, but I believe we definitely got in line at the right time for that. With equipment and needing space, I did have a 18-wheeler show up at the station today and drop off 3 pallets of fire hose. So it's good, right? As told Peter, our problems are good problems to have. It means we're growing. There's still problems nonetheless. So all of our equipment is showing up. We just don't have the fire truck yet to put it on. And then, on the other equipment replacement for us this year was we finally got rid of the 2006 Crown Vic and replaced that with a new F-150. So any questions for me? I think we collectively hit all of the marks we were looking for this past year, so I'm excited.
Any questions?
Question more for our manager. I know you mentioned the fire station. I know there's lots of moving parts. We're kind of maybe backing up a little bit. Do we have a timeline for when we think we might have an idea for how the path we want to take, or is that still? I mean, I know funding's I know that's the big driver. We have no funding source at this point, but just in the planning stages, where are we with that?
Sure, and we continue to pursue some funding opportunities. We've gotten some partnerships in the last few months, funding wise, between the league and the Hometown Strong program through the governor's office, where we have some additional support trying to help us locate some funding. So that's ongoing. Our next step with, I guess, figuring out really the path between that property and the 6th Street property is the demolition that's going to be involved and the effect of hazardous materials like asbestos in that. And we actually have a vendor that's going to, in the next week or so, do the sampling and then the testing required that will allow us to have a better cost estimate for that demolition, because we've seen a wide range of what the demolition of that building is going to cost just based on unknowns of asbestos. So I think once we have that fine-tuned, that's going to give us a better just idea of what it will take to do the demolition. And then if it's a figure that we can manage, or a figure that we can work with a state grant to manage, et cetera, that will help it go faster. And then it'll allow us to then look at the matrix of, okay, is it better to spend more to build a fully new station that way, and then have a building, for example, over here that could be sold for redevelopment? I was in another city in the last few weeks that had an old fire station behind the city hall that is now a functioning brewery. And that's just one example of a different kind of business that could make use of something like a fire station. Vehicle repair, that's another type of use. Restaurants, these are all different possibilities for how that structure could be reused. If you could sell that property probably for $1 million plus, that takes the price down of what it costs to build something over here. So those are the factors we're trying to get better information on to help us make a good decision.
On that note, and something that rattled around me earlier, in my head earlier, we were talking about some things that are coming development-wise. So the things that are happening right now development-wise seem to be maybe hitting, they start impacting our tax base in 2026 tax year. So it sounds like to me, maybe the debt service that would come with this fire station begins to align with new streams of revenue, new tax sources. Does that track? I mean, am I crazy for saying that, or does that seem to match?
They keep asking me when it's gonna create revenue, so they can start spending it.
We're gonna get Steve out there with a shovel.
You know, this is tax related, but maybe nobody can answer this, I don't know, but I was told that the General Assembly had passed legislation to do away with any business tax going forward. If we have corporations who come in and ask for incentives and we give them incentives, and then they don't have to end up paying any taxes, what happens?
Would that, I wonder if I haven't heard anything about that, but I wonder if it's really related to income type taxes.
corporate income tax.
You know,
Corporate income.
versus, you know, our incentives are related to our revenues, which don't include those anyhow. So,
Okay.
all right. Chief
Thank
File?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
I thought y'all would come up together and sing a duet.
That's tomorrow.
They were a
Okay.
tag team.
I let him go first. I caved. Well, good evening. Certainly our hot topic was resolved in the newspaper, I think, where we finally went full staff. So a little over 2 years in the making since I took over as your chief back towards the end of 21. So we're very excited about where we are. Currently, we're kind of trying to go ahead and get grasp of what our 5-year plan is going to be. I've got it documented, and we'll talk about it a little bit tomorrow. I will tell you very briefly, not to go over too much about what we're going to talk about tomorrow, but the state is not backing away from the expansion of the basic law enforcement training program, which means now turnkey, it's going to take me about a year to get an officer on the street. So that's going to be something that we really have to factor in, knowing that, me and Steve have talked about the growth, and we're able to pretty spot on know what some of these businesses and residential areas and whatnot are going to do to our call volume. So to get ahead of that, we do have to go ahead and kind of get something in writing and kind of get a good plan for that. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. But as far as currently, we are full staff. They're still in, we've still got a bunch of them in field training, but within the next 30 to 60 days, everybody will actually be rolled out in their own vehicle. So we're full staff on paper. They all work for us, but they're not all released to work alone yet. So, and we are getting very close to that. So long 2 years in the making, and definitely thank you for your support, and thank you to my staff that toughed it out, the ones that were here through the hard 2 year time. So.
And what I would say is, the discussion a year ago was what would it look like for us to have the people that we could do the things we want to do, and not just the things we were struggling to be able to not even do what we needed to. We were just trying to stay afloat, right, at a certain point. But now we've got the people involved, and we look to the fire department in the future to feel the same way. That this idea of the proactive service that we're providing, an enhanced service, it really makes a difference. I think. I mean, I'd like for you to talk a little bit just about day to day what the difference is operationally.
Yeah, very much so. We talked about and that's kind of proactive is the word we're using. We were at triage level 2 years ago. I kept using that terminology over and over and over, triage level, because we were barely able to cover our shifts. Then we were utilizing the sheriff's office to fill in additional shifts. Then when we took it back over, we had one officer working by themselves. So obviously there was a lot of problems that came about when you think that we were down to 7 staff members at one point in time. And that included, including me and SROs and patrol and everybody combined. So we really have rebuilt. But yeah, definitely, and some of you that have been on the board for a while remember our monthly reports used to have 3-digit numbers. So we may have had 700 or 800 activities for the month, and that was really because we were at triage level. So if you can imagine, you've got about a 20-to-1 ratio there. So when you're responding to a call for service, you anticipate you're going to spend a significant amount of time, whether you're processing the scene, you're dealing with the citizens, you're taking a report, whereas a proactive, instead of reactive, doing the proactive work is actually very quick. So a business check is very quick, a part check is very quick, doing a follow-up is typically very quick. But those reactive calls are what really, burn up most of our time. So I think, I believe, going off my memory, this month was around 2,400 events. So we've basically tripled what our events were. Conservatively, we can say we've doubled what our events were, just by bringing the staffing up to where it should be. And obviously, once these other additional officers are released, we definitely will see that number going over 3,000. So that's what we have to maintain. Whenever I look at the numbers and look at where the direction we're going, knowing that, for instance, a truck stop, we know that's a high volume generator of call volume. And the calls it generates expends more time than our proactive work does. So where we say that we know by looking at our local truck stops, we're going to see a 10% increase in overall call volume. We're going to get a 10% increase, but we're actually going to lose way more than that in our ability to do proactive work. So that's the reason we really have to get a plan, kind of plan ahead, knowing that it takes so long to get somebody onto the road working, and kind of, we want to be able to maintain what we've got, not slide back down any. Because we're very fortunate where we are now. I think the citizens see it too. So we're having a lot of good interactions with them. So that positive interaction part is really priceless when you look at the current state of law enforcement across the nation. So to have that positive interaction is really, really important to us.
I did have a question that was in your report for this month. The vehicle stops 228. Does that include the 147 that the ACE team did?
Yes, yes, it would include it. Yeah,
so that was,
so there. So on the overall department report, it would include the stuff the ACE team completed. So obviously, our ACE team's being very proactive, which is what we put them there for. So, and they're getting a lot of good stops.
Yeah,
keeping in mind that a majority of the stops they're making and a majority of the problems that they're resolving on the street from people that aren't even citizens here. I don't have a firm percentage of it, but it is a high percentage that are not citizens here. So we're really dealing with the traffic that comes through here, which if you remember the last time we did a study out here on Salisbury Avenue and the crazy amount of number, I wish I could remember what it was, like 25,000 cars a day or something that was really high. I'll tell you, we just did one on 3rd Street. We had 18,000 passes on the hidden radar on 3rd Street. So 3rd Street's a heavily traveled roadway. I think it was near 5,000 vehicles a day, I believe is what it was. So we've got a lot of pass-through traffic coming through and cutting over to 85, going out into the county, and obviously our north and south. You always hear about north and south on I-85 being a dirty road. And what they mean by that is ones that where narcotics and cash, cash flows south, narcotics are going north. Well, I'll tell you, our road out here is the same. At 100% is the same as 85 because people know that there are county units out there looking for people that are moving narcotics and cash and illegal firearms and whatnot. So they get off of 85 and they try to come through our city. So we're starting to hit on that. So,
it says there were cited charges of 194.
Yes.
From the ACE team.
Yes.
So yeah.
Most definitely. Most definitely. They and like I mentioned, I know I mentioned this last month, but that's not giving Granny on a Sunday ticket for doing 9 miles per hour over by any means. Those are all valid high-end charges. So, a lot of for the ACE team, what you would consider a lower end charge would be somebody without a driver's license. That's really they're really when I hired them and told them what we want them to do. They're targeting drugs, illegal activity, warrants, guns. They're targeting all the big stuff. So now they're going to get citations mixed in with that, obviously. And if it needs a citation to correct the behavior, they'll use it. But a lot of times it's your higher level offenses. Not a whole lot of 1 month out inspections anymore. Yeah. So. Yes.
Yeah, with the future expansion, with growth in the police department or in town, meaning growth in our police department, do we actually have enough adequate space in this building for you?
That's a problem we were already talking about. So in the facility overall, potentially on the PD side, we're kind of maxed out right now. So unfortunately, we're already talking about maybe having to utilize cubicles to separate off some work areas at least. It wouldn't really be quote unquote secure work areas, but we'll be able to separate them off. That's we're kind of growing so fast that we've already outgrown what we've got, and that's kind of the unfortunate part. We're kind of in the same situation on evidence. You know, our evidence room, state of the art, really nice, rolling cabinets. Now our ACE team is bringing up so much evidence, it looks overran in there right now. Still organized, you still find it, but it is it's very tight in there already. So, you know, I would say unfortunate, but you know, the days of being able to get rid of evidence very quickly has gone away. You have to maintain it for so long, and there are requirements for different level of offenses, how long we have to keep it. So, anything that may be DNA based, you know, quite often we're stuck with it forever. We won't get rid of it in any of our lifetimes. So, as it builds up, yeah, we're probably going to be at a point of needing expansion at some point, whether that's to utilize our code enforcement officer's office and move him to another office somewhere in the building. That would probably be the easiest way for PD expansion initially, but down the road we're going to probably have to look at some expansion elsewhere.
These are good problems.
Good problem to have.
Good problems to have. Definitely good problems to have. We can make it work right now, but obviously looking at a 5-year plan, we know you know, the goal is going to be to have more supervision on the road, more supervision late at night, and that's going to kind of be our direction. So there's definitely going to be some growth on the PD side. So exciting time to be here, though.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
So next, community outreach involvement, which had some focuses related to community engagement, enhancing that, and in particular, community information signage. And I'll say that having Anna on board, she's done a great job in enhancing what we are able to do day to day in a variety of media, whether it be electronic things, printed things, etc. And really pleased from my perspective where we've been able to take that, and even our departments are doing the same thing, especially on social media. We've had several events that have offered some face-to-face interactions and engagements, and we continue to do that. And in our printed newsletters, we've supplemented that with 2 additional mailings now beyond just the quarterly newsletters. So we have that, and then on the signage front, you know, I think we've made some good strides with the wayfinding project. That'll be a real big help. And then between that and the sign we're working towards out here, I think that will accomplish those goals. But certainly welcome Anna to jump in as you see fit, and anyone else really.
I don't know. I think Peter pretty much said everything that needed to be said. Just I've been working toward trying to, I guess one of the things that I've thought of as I've been doing, especially with the social media, is interconnecting our different accounts, like, you know, sharing posts from fire, PD, library on our town account, and you know, vice versa if it's something that's pertinent, and linking to the website and just those sorts of things to try to make our online presence a bit more robust.
Great. Thank you for that.
All right, and then staff excellence. I really, you know, Heather's kind of standing in the back or sitting in the back row, but I might invite her to come forward actually, because it's something we've talked about, ensuring a high level of customer service, and I think she's an example of where we're trying to really make some adjustments so that when folks come in, we can really be helpful to them and try to take care of things. And not necessarily just say, oh, call this person or that person, or they're not here, sorry, you have to come back next week. Those are the things we've been talking about. Not that we have everything solved yet, but they're the kinds of things we're talking about so that we can have some solutions in place now that we've got more staff on board. So you're right there, so I'll ask you to jump in as needed, and then we'll talk about other elements of this.
I think just as we have brought Allison on, and myself included, just getting to know everybody here, what each person does, what each person is responsible for, and how we can support each other within the whole town and the whole staff. Peter and I discussed with our girls up front, Allison and Christy, that they would have access to the event permits and things like that, so that whenever citizens come up, we don't have to say, oh, well, we don't have that right now, we'll get back to you. We want to make sure that they have everything at hand that they will need to support our citizens. And any questions that they arise, instead of saying, well, let me transfer you to Joel, if we know that answer, we just want to make sure that they have it right there.
No, that's great. I mean, I would say that you all in the front are the face of the town. I mean, you really are. You're the first impression. And so I appreciate that extra effort.
Yeah.
For
Can I make a comment, sir? I'm not saying anything bad, but I did hear a comment about the front area. And that's basically, you know, we got enclosed glass. And the comment was, maybe we need to open that glass up where people can see faces. It's more open to people, more friendly and everything else. Because I think people get kind of turned off when they walk in and all they see is a sheet of glass there. So that's just a suggestion somebody made to me. So the main thing, we want to be have a friendly attitude for people coming in so we can welcome people, and I think that's really important.
I think you're exactly right, but there is the safety aspect. of it,
I understand that. I understand
they're
that.
crazies in every bunch. And
I understand that.
Yeah, the schools
Yeah.
are like that now
Yeah.
too.
yeah, but you are right, making sure that we're a friendly and welcoming town.
Yeah.
and the
I
front
think for the
office is the
most
face
part,
of
when we see citizens citizens come in, I try to get up there before, so that they're not standing in the middle with all this glass around. Which way do I go? You kind of welcome them as they come in, so that you're right there at that window.
Okay.
Instead of just sitting waiting, which way are they going to go, and then get up. You just have to make that, like, to be proactive about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that would kind of, keep that security piece as well.
Yeah.
Just so you kind of assess the situation before, it's right there in your face. So.
Thank you.
And the other thing I'll mention, Joel, what we've done with our solid waste over the past year is it's been about efficiency and safety, but it's also been about customer service. Our switch to the automated collection process, which is still ongoing, but there's been a really high level of service involved in that process, and we've had Eddie on the ground trying to make a difference day by day, and Eddie's trying to retire eventually, but he's not going to do it till we got it right.
Exactly.
But Joel, I don't know if you want to add in on that front.
Sure. Garbage collection, the switchover went really well, to be honest with you. It was well accepted. Still have some issues to deal with, but in the process now of changing days around a little bit, especially Tuesday and Wednesday, sliding into a smaller route on Thursday, just so the guys can get to the landfill and get dumped. If they don't get dumped in the afternoon by picking up trash, then they runs them behind the next day. So we're trying to move that, and especially with the growth coming as well. So we're trying to do that. But yes, Eddie is wanting to retire at some point. So he is on the ground. We've got an article going into the newsletter this time explaining some of the issues that we are having, especially the cans facing the wrong way, putting them under power lines, putting too much trash in them so when they grab them, it actually squirts out the top. Just routine things that they were doing really well. The residents were doing really well at the beginning, and now it's going back the other way. So we're trying to reiterate some of that. We're tagging more cans now than we ever have. For several reasons, stacking trash on the side of the can, not in the can. If you need another can, you need to contact us. So we're just running through that, and that's kind of the issues we're having with it. But as far as overall, we're doing really, really well. It's moving like we wanted it to. So.
Yeah, I actually saw one of the truck driver have to get out of the vehicle and go move a trash can to a position where he could get to it.
Right.
And I mean, yeah,
it's taking time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that takes up time. And, we're trying to be more efficient, and we're actually getting less efficient.
Yeah.
And it's week by week. Some people have a bad week, and, we understand that until you get out and you move it. But, don't put it next to a fire hydrant or a mailbox or a guide wire, because that truck doesn't care. whatever it grabs, it's gonna try to throw in that truck, and it doesn't like it. So, from experience, we haven't torn up too much things.
In other
too many
words,
things.
don't stand by your trash can on trash day.
No, not a good idea.
Not at all.
Give him at least 4 feet on either side. Yeah. Sam's good. He's really good, and he's getting a lot better. His routes are picking up faster, but yeah, it's still a process. Still a process to get everybody on the same page. So, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the other area I think that we've been able to have across the organization benefit from our enhanced recruitment portal that we've been able to implement with Anna's really hard work of getting everything set up after a long time leading up to that. But you know that we've seen how that portal is working for us. And getting our postings out there a little broader. So we're still kind of in this transition in a bit of a test phase, but we seem to be moving in the right direction. And I don't know collectively on that side of the room. I mean, y'all, everybody, when I've talked with y'all, it seems like everybody's feeling optimistic about our new process and our, you know, the way we're recruiting talent. And because that's what we need. In order to provide our services, we need to continue to have a strong and talented staff. So any comments that any of y'all have about that or those processes?
I think it's much better. More of a centralized system versus scanned applications. They may get one here in 1-2 weeks and then have to dig their email to find on it. I think it's more seamless. User friendly.
I'd say it's more fair to the applicants too. Yeah.
You definitely get a reach. We got an application yesterday from a guy from Pakistan, so we're getting out there.
Okay.
Well, I had a call, email one day this week from someone asking me about medical facility here, and she said that her church was sponsoring a Syrian family in our area and wanted to know. And I was able to give her a little bit of information. So, I mean, you know, there are people coming here from lots of different places.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, I think we can open it up for community comments on these priority areas, if any, and then y'all can follow and close this out. But I don't know, community. Now's the time. You're welcome to come forward to the.
I just like doing that. I found a pothole recently, so I'm not quite.
I hope it wasn't in town.
Not in town.
Yes, it was. It was at the post office. Don't worry, they fixed it.
Government property, federal government.
No,
property.
I understood that. The poor man almost had a coronary because I think he thought I was going to sue him. Because I went down. I was carrying a 25-pound box, and I went down into one of those potholes. It was about that deep. Couldn't see it over the box.
We're glad you're okay.
Glad you're
And
standing.
X-rays says I'm doing fine. It just the knee doesn't work quite the way it used to. But I'm okay.
Yeah, I will say, you get stuff done because we have signage on our glass now.
Yes, well, I had to put my face imprint in there so you can erase it, you know, with the furry stuff, but that's okay. Whatever I do.
I'm glad you're okay.
I'm glad.
Yes, yeah.
And I'll do whatever it takes to get the job done. If I have to stand alone and make a fool of myself. No, I think that I think we're doing a great job. And speaking of potholes, which was on my list, I don't want us to fix the government potholes. They put gravel in it, they cold packed it, the rain came, it's already washed out, and I had to point out to the manager, that pothole there is a hazard. People with wheel walkers and handicap, they're gonna hurt themselves. You know, rubber people like me don't hurt themselves. But we've got some real serious ones. We've got one down in Harrison, on the corner of Harrison and Salisbury. I watch people, even the kids, stumble over it. We're going to get somebody really hurt. And I know, Joel, you can't track every pothole. And I know if I type in and say, there's a pothole here, you'll get to it. But I get people complain to me, well, you talk to the board. It's like, well, you can talk to them too. But they tell me the list of what they need fixed. And there's a lot of emphasis on broken sidewalks and potholes. And I'm sorry, I'm getting older, so I'm a little bit more sensitive to that, and I don't know how we can improve the process there. I'm not expecting you to fix them like, jump, but maybe we need to set up kind of you've got a pothole issue or a road issue or something, go here.
So we do. We have a portal.
The portal?
And people can put that information in the portal. It'll go to Joel. I would say the other thing is, and I've seen it around, is making sure, because a lot of these issues are actually SRU issues, where they've gone in and done a water line tap or something like that for new development, making sure that we're holding them accountable to getting those areas repaved and the quality of it, and making sure the quality of it is up to our standard.
And I admit I was unfamiliar with the portal, so I appreciate you sharing it with me. I will utilize it.
But that's a great point, right? If you're unfamiliar with it, there are a lot of other people that are too. So yeah.
And like the note,
Yeah.
And
put it in there and it'll send it to me. I will check it. If it is a SRV problem, I'll
Yeah.
send it to them.
And so you can access that directly from the homepage. of the
okay,
town's
and I can
website.
do that. I'll go
And that is the fastest and easiest way to make sure it
I'm
gets
looking
to.
for fast and easy
Yeah.
because I'm lazy. And I know about the replacing pipes and all. They dig a big hole in the middle of the road and we bump over it. And we scatter gravel everywhere, which means there's less gravel in the fill-in spot. But they never put a sealer or there's a word, and I hate being old. It stabilizes loose things, like goo. And pretty soon you're going, boom, boom, boom. And on Yadkin, we've got like 4 of them. And I don't mind, but again, you're going to get people complaining, and I hate to use this, why aren't you taking care of us old people who've been here a long time? And I think we are. I just don't think we're getting the word out to those people where they're always seeing the growth and they don't tie it to the maintenance of the people who are still here. So they see it as moving away, all focused on all the new people. We need to just take a moment every once in a while and say, we really appreciate you old folks. And I can leave you my address so you can send me the thank you card. But I think that's I'm excited about what's happening. And I think we're doing a good job. Can we improve? We can always improve. And I try to remind myself that when I want people to be better than I am.
Well, and so you bring up a great point, because I think we've got a lot of processes in place. We do our pavement rating survey and it helps prioritize. What I think you're right about is those things that we're doing and the way we're doing them, we maybe don't do an effective job of communicating. Here's how we do this and here's why we do this, so that people understand, right?
Yeah,
people understand why their street hasn't been repaved and somebody else's has. Right.
I'll kind of quote something that Mike said a long time ago when I was talking about security. Everybody wants the policeman on their street. They don't realize that their street is one of the safer streets. Yeah, they have their problems, but kids running and screaming is not the same as having a drug house. And
not everybody wants the police on their street.
Well, the thing is, that is true. I mean, every time they show up in my alley, I'm there like, God, I don't know what I did wrong. But the bottom line is, we all want to be first. But I do understand that everybody sees the progress, but we don't take that progress and relate it back to the established families.
That's a great point.
Maybe the town needs to, maybe we need to go to the Mills, Congregate Mill site and do question and answer, sessions or something
All of
like
those
that.
type of things. You bring up a great point, and I think that's something that we, as a board and a staff, need to make sure that we don't lose sight of. And it's all back to maintaining our identity as a town. That as we grow, things do change, but we also need to make sure that we're still reaching out to those people that have made Spencer what it is today.
Somebody told me about a survey that was done, I think, at the county level. Like, what do you like when you go to see the Transportation Museum? that little town with all its historic character, we just love it. The people, helpful, blah, blah, blah. It's not us newcomers that are creating that impact. It's the people that have been here who have the stories. And when they don't feel appreciated or acknowledged, then we're losing that historic character. And we all know I'm a real big history nut. So. But I want us to keep that character, and we are. I watch you very carefully because I think we're trying to do balanced growth, and I think we'll make some mistakes, but we'll get a lot right if we pay attention to the old and the new, and tie the two together. The new people wouldn't come in if the old people hadn't created the character. Let's give the old people some credit for having created a character. And the story, Kyle, help me. Labor history stories, thank you. Those are great places because I saw people out that I didn't even know existed, and the guy told me about the strikes and the scabs and the union and how the town helped and all this wonderful stuff. And he was pleased to tell his story. He was pleased somebody wanted to listen to him. And I think that tells me something. We need to listen, even if it doesn't help us with our progress. It helps us maintain our character.
Well said.
I'm not that skinny anymore. Let's go this way.
Talk less,
Thank you.
listen more.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie.
Back to you,
She
Mayor.
said it all. I mean,
She did.
Board, any other feedback for tonight and going into tomorrow morning?
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Absolutely.
Remind us again, we're convening at what time tomorrow?
We'll kick off around 8:30. So we'll have some refreshments available in the morning, and we'll kick off 8:30, and we'll likely wrap up sometime between 3:15 and 3:30.
I'll be here around 9ish. We have our mayor's roundtable in the morning, so I'll be here right after that.
And I'm looking at this. So what would it be okay for us to would you like us to wait for your arrival, perhaps, or
Absolutely
should we
not.
proceed?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I'm the least important person.
Well, we do have I think you're planning on sharing some inspiration in the morning. So
yeah,
we'll probably kick it off maybe somewhere around 8:45, and we'll adjust a little bit here with the suggested
and I plan
times
to
in the
leave.
morning.
Yeah, I'll leave that a little bit early to make sure that I'm here.
Okay.
It's at the Gateway building, so.
Okay.
Okay.
So that means I need to drop Charlie what time?
Well, you can bring him because Aaron's going to bring Murphy so that they can play together. I'll bring.
We
Fritz,
won't have a
too.
glass wall anymore.
Mark Brain Marshall.
No, I think
Cannot break it.
So is he.
I think it's best for me not to have it.
Understand. Okay, great.
But I think for tonight we are to recess.
Yes,
right,
we will
till
have to
tomorrow.
recess rather
Yeah.
than adjourn. So if there is a motion to recess, we will do that. There's a motion by Mr. Mohammed. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor? All right. We stand recessed until tomorrow morning. And again, tomorrow morning is an open meeting, so the public is invited to come and participate as well.